So in the last lecture, we saw how the exchange rates are determined, at least in the short run, using a theory of demand and supply for domestic assets. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about why and how China undervalues its currency. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive why a country would try to devalue its own currency. Now, what does devaluing currency means? That means they are trying to say, as somebody in the United States, it would be much cheaper for us to buy Chinese products because China's currency is undervalued. That means our US dollar can buy a lot of Chinese currency, which is yuan. On the other hand, people in China, it is kind of difficult to buy US products because yuan is undervalued. Their yuan cannot buy a lot of US dollars, so that's why they can't afford US products. Now, why you want to do that? And there's a very strong reasons behind it. But before we go into those details, let's talk about how this currency is undervalued, what China is trying to do. So Chinese yuan is the Chinese currency, and you can see here is the exchange rate between yuan and dollar. So it is yuan per dollar since the early 1980s till today. And you can see here how the dollar appreciated, especially between the period 1980s till 1995. Then it was held very steady, right? There's not much movement for the next 10 years. So between 1995 and 2005, it remained steady. Then maybe the yuan appreciated a little bit. That means in this part, dollar depreciated. Again, in this part, it's pretty steady. So what Chinese government does, they actively try to control the currency. According to Peterson Institute of International Economics study said in 2010 that yuan was on an average 20% undervalued versus the dollar. That means Chinese currency is undervalued by almost 20%. The question arises why China undervalues its currency. Undervalued yuan makes US dollar more valuable, which essentially means that higher valued US dollar makes it cheaper for US to buy Chinese goods. Hence, US import from China increases or China's export to US increases. Now, why China does it? Increase China's exports to US helps it to maintain jobs in China. That's the basic purpose, because they want to run the factories in China going by selling those products at a cheaper rate to the United States. In a way, it works for the people in the United States because our dollar can buy a lot of Chinese products. Think about stores like Dollar Tree, or even in Walmart, or even stores like Target, or even stores like Macy's. Why most of these products are made in China? Because our dollar can buy a lot of their yuan, because their yuan is undervalued, so we can buy a lot of their products, and in return what China gets is that they get to sell a lot of their products to us. Now question is how China undervalues yuan, how they do it, what's the process? So in an effort to hold the value of yuan comparatively low, the government has to buy foreign currencies through trade surplus and investment. Mind you, China runs a huge trade surplus with us. That means they have a lot of dollars sitting in their accounts in China. Now what they do with those accounts, the dollar they have accumulated over time. Essentially they take that dollar and buy US assets. Remember who is the biggest lender or biggest buyer of US treasury bills? That means the bonds issued by the US government. It's China. They hold upward of $1 trillion of US treasury bills. They are one of the biggest lender along with Japan to the United States government. And when they buy those treasury bills, what they are doing? They're buying US assets. Now when they buy US assets, they artificially increase the value of the dollar. So Chinese purchase of dollar denominated assets increase the demand for it and hence increase the value of dollar. So it's a simple demand and supply game that China is playing right now in the foreign exchange market. So let's try to understand this using a diagram, and we'll be drawing a demand and supply diagram to understand it. So we'll have, so I'll measure here yuan per dollar. That is, yuan is the currency, the foreign currency, which is Chinese currency, and this is the quantity of dollar assets, and this is my supply of dollar assets, and this is my demand for dollar assets. So let's say under a normal situation where the Chinese government doesn't intervene, let's say 5 yuan per dollar is the exchange rate. Let's say that. Obviously, if this is the rate, China can't sell us a lot of stuff. So they need to undervalue their currency. Now, what China is doing, they are basically buying up US assets using the dollar they have earned by selling a lot of stuff to US. So they essentially artificially bump up the demand for US assets. So demand for US assets increased by Chinese purchase of US assets. So by buying this, they push up the value of the dollar here. Here it might be, say, 8 yuan per dollar. Now, our dollar gets appreciated. If dollar gets appreciated, that means the other currency, yuan, gets depreciated, decrease in value. By artificially increasing the demand for US assets, they are trying to control the value of the dollar. Essentially, they are overvaluing the value of dollar by undervaluing their own currency. And this is exactly what China is doing for the last 25-30 years to make sure the engine of growth, which is manufacturing sector, keep humming. And for us in the US is good because we get a lot of cheap Chinese products, but it has its other costs in terms of declining manufacturing in the United States, which we'll be talking about later.